Hello all and welcome to today's topic on geospatial analysis with Python day 3. This video is going to be very interesting because now we will actually start to see the power of Python. We will wait for a couple of minutes if anyone wants to join in. Otherwise, we will get started with today's topic. Meanwhile, if you have any questions that you want to ask based on previous videos, make sure that you put them in the chat so that I can read and try to answer those to you. In previous videos, we have seen the most important data types that we are going to use whenever we will deal with Python. So data types such as list or dictionaries or set or tuple and things like that. As people are joining in, I will make sure that my setup of today's notebook is done. So I will simply go to the desktop and I will find my folder GeoPy live, and I will then turn on my environment. So you can see we have this GeoENV. So the way I will do that is by going into first of all the folder, then typing source GeoENV bin activate, and then I will get inside my notebooks folder and I will open it in my code editor. Now I'm using VS Code, but feel free to use anything else if you want. Now today's video is going to be very useful because so far we have just seen the properties of the Python, how exactly we can use Python to write anything. But in today's video, we will see how to use Python to actually make our life easy. You will see that everywhere you go, people will tell that used Python is used to automate things. Using Python, we can automate boring jobs. We can write a code which can help us to do calculations very fast. Now we will see what do they mean by that and how exactly does this happen. So we will start with first of all conditions. And B. Now let me change it to markdown and write it conditions. Now what are conditions? So conditions are ways in which we can give direction to our code. So what do we mean by that? Most of the time, if any website you access with the where you require to do the sign up or something like that, you will see that if you are not signed in, you will see certain features are missing. For example, if you take a very simple case of, let's say, YouTube, once you log in to your YouTube account, then you will be able to see more videos according to your need. So if I go to the YouTube right now, I will see the videos that are based on my history. This is because I have logged in. If I open the same YouTube page in the incognito mode, you will see that I see different videos. This is because under the code of YouTube, somewhere it is written that if user is logged in and then run certain type of script, and if user is not logged in, then run some another types of scripts. So this is a very basic example. You can consider another scenario where, let's say that you are writing a script where you are asking a user to enter some number, and then your script will tell the user whether the number that they have inserted is odd or even. A simple thing like this. So in this condition, we cannot just simply write the code and execute it as it is. We will have to add some conditions to it. So that is where the conditions that we are about to see will jump in. So the very first condition that we will see is if condition. So the first one that we will see is if condition. Now how do we write if condition? Again, we will take a simple scenario. I will change this back to Python, and we will take a very simple scenario. Take input from user and display if the number is odd or even. Okay, so we will take input from user. So input number is equal to input and then please enter number. Okay, I have to put it in a string. Okay, now if I print this input number, if I print this GOVENV, you will see that I have to enter the number. Let's say I have added 5 and I got 5. One thing that you have to notice and you always have to remember that the input will take the data in a string format. So if I do the type and if I run this code one more time, let's say if I write 5, you will see that we got the data as a string format. So the first thing we have to do, always remember whenever you will use input, is by using the by actually converting this string into integer. So what I will do is I will write int and maybe I will add one more variable. So int number is equal to int of input number, input underscore number. Okay, now if I check the type of int number, let's say the number is 2, I got the class int. Okay, we are halfway there. We are taking the number whatever user is adding and then we are converting it into a proper format. Now we have to decide how to move forward. We have to print this is even number or we have to print this is odd number. Let's start with one condition at a time. So let's say that if the number is even, then we want to print this. This is the entire condition as of now. Don't think about the odd number or anything like that. Now on, for now, we just have to print this is even number if the number is actually even. Now we will add the condition. So to add an if condition, we use the keyword if. So it is as simple as that. So remember, as I said, that Python, if you know English, then you can read most of the code of Python. So it is similar to that. What we will do right now is if int num, then we will write the %sign 2 is equal to 0. So this means that take the number, divide it by 2, and if the remainder is 0, then once the condition is over, then we tell it to Python by using double colon. And then whatever we want to perform, if this condition is met true, is written inside this if statement. That means you have to be sure that you are one step indented to the right than the if. So if starts at this position, so that's why this indentation of 4 spaces or one tab must be there. If I write it like this, you can see that immediately I'm getting an error that the indentation needs to be fixed. So expected indented block. That is why it must be inside an indentation. Okay, so now again let's read our if block. If int num divisible by 2 gives you the remainder of 0, then print this is even number. Of course, if you take any even number, if you divide it by 2, you will never get any remainder. You will always get it as a 0. So that is why this condition will be true when the int num actually is even. Now let's save this and see what happens. Now if I run this and if I add 8, voila, we get that this is a even number. So I can actually write this is an even number over here. So this is how the if condition is added. So you can see one more time, if then int number. So what exactly is this is just one condition. So if you are beginner and if you want to write properly in a way that everyone who will read your code will understand, you can actually put the condition in parenthesis. By doing this, you will be the reader will be sure that okay, this is the actual condition that programmer wants to make sure that this is true in order to get this function executed. Now inside this you can write n number of lines, that will not matter. So I can write print second line, so on and so forth. But as soon as I get out of this, and if I write one more line over here, line outside, if I save this and if I execute this, so if I give the number 5, of course this is not even, and that is why this print and this print will not get executed. But since this print is outside the if scope, you can see that this is executed. I will for now close this print type int. Okay, so I hope that if condition is clear to you guys. Now please write in the chat box if you have any questions about the if conditions. Okay, if is solved, but what about the other condition? When the number is even, this is fine, we are golden, we are printing that this is an even number. But what if the number is odd? Then in that case we want to write that this is an odd number. So let's see how to do if and else. Second we have is if else condition. Okay, so in if else condition we will actually tell Python that if something is true then do this, but if that is not true then go ahead and do something else. So again the same example we will take. Okay, here we only presented if the number is even. Now we will present if the number is odd or even. Okay, so first thing I will carry is this, the input bar, because that is going to be same anyways. And I will also carry the if condition, because we want to check that if the number is divisible by 2, then we want to write that okay, it is even. And now if this is not true, then what do we say when we are talking in English about do this or do that in using the if? We will say something like, if the number is even, then print this is even, else print this is odd. So the same English word will be used in Python, else. It is as simple as that. And again, else will not require any type check or any condition check, right? Because we are already checking the condition over here. So we are checking whether the number is divisible by 2 or not. If it is divisible by 2, in fact if this is true, then we are getting inside it. And the only boolean which is left after true will be false, and that is why we don't need to write any condition for else. We can simply write print this is an odd number, right? Either a number is going to be even or the number is going to be odd. There is no third possibility, right? So of course we will consider that 0 is of course neither even nor odd. But for now let's just stick with the fact that a number is either going to be true or false. A boolean value is either going to be true or false, right? So the current time, either it is going to be daytime or it is going to be night time. It is going to be AM or it is going to be PM, right? So in such conditions, then you can check for one condition, and if that is true then you can execute some code. And of course if that condition is false, then you can execute something else. So when you have a switch type of scenario, then you can use if and else. Now let's try to execute this and see what do we get. Okay, running the function and adding the number as 71, and we got the result as this is an odd number. Running it one more time, adding the number 88, this is an even number. Running it one more time, writing 163, this is an odd number. So you can see, using if and else, this is how we can actually write different Python code depending upon condition, whether something is true or something is false. So this is how if and else condition is written. Do you have any questions in this? Please write in the text box. If you have a question, I will keep on checking it and keep on replying as well. Okay, moving forward. So far we have only used this is equal to sign. But if you remember our lecture about operators, if I just go to the operators one more time, I might have comparison operator somewhere here, right? So you can see that instead of just is equal to, you can use any other comparison operators available to us. So I can also change this if else to something like, if the number is greater than or equal to 10, then we can write number is bigger than or equal to 10, and similar to this I can write number is smaller than 10. Again, if you think about it, your number is either going to be bigger than or equal to 10, and if that is not true, then of course that means the number is smaller than 10. So again, here either you are on the left hand side or you are on the right hand side. Either your condition is true or your condition is false, and that is why this will work perfectly fine. If I give the number 14, I get that this is a bigger than or equal to 10. If I give the number 2, I will get this is smaller than 10. Like that, we can actually build the conditions. So using any other comparison operator, we can build the condition. I can also have something like greater than 5, and again do the same thing, bigger than 5 or smaller than 5. If I save this and if I check one more time, if the number is 4, then smaller than 5. If the number is 87, bigger than 5. So this is how we can actually use the comparison operator to check the command. Now we can also use one more type of operator over here, which is known as logical operator. So that means we can also use and, or, and not to actually combine multiple conditions together. So let's now take a look at that example. So I will add testing logical and comparison operators together in if else condition. Okay, now let's try that. Now what we will do is we will check whether the number is even or an odd, and we will also check whether the number is greater than 10 or not. So I will simply carry this, and then if, now I will write the first command, which is int num divisible by 2 is equal to 0, and then I will write my second condition that int num is greater than 10, and then I can write print number is even and also greater than 10, and then I can write else print. Now here in the else there are again two possibilities, right? Either your number can be odd and greater than 10, or your number can be or your number can be odd and greater than smaller than 10. Your number can be even and greater than 10, and even and smaller than 10. So you can see that there are four possibilities over here, and this if condition is taking one of the four possibilities where the number is even and greater than 10. Now all the remaining three possibilities we cannot just add in the else statement, right? Because if this condition is true and this condition is true, then this will execute. But what if one of the conditions is false? Then we need to add more else's, right? So if the number is even and number is greater than 10, then we want to execute something. If the number is even but the number is lesser than 10, then we want to execute something. If the number is odd and greater than 10, then we want to execute something. And finally, if the number is odd and also less than 10, then we want to execute something else. So you can see that now this is little bit complicated because we have multiple else statements and multiple if statements coming into the picture. Let's now for this problem, let's just write number is not satisfying condition, and we will see in few minutes how to handle that type of situations. Okay, writing the number, first we will write even and greater than 10. So let's say 202, and number is even and also greater than 10. If I execute it again, number which is even but smaller than 10, for example 6, then we got number is not satisfying condition. Similarly, I can write 109, still the same result, and finally 3, and still the same result. So you can see that now you will feel the need of having multiple if statements available. Now what should we do in that condition? Now let's see one more thing, which is known as if, elif and else condition. Now what do we mean by that is we can add if condition and else condition as we were doing in the past, but we can also add else if condition. So what do we mean by that? Again, if you consider the English language, you will see that if the number is greater than 10, then give student marks A. Else if number is greater than 5, give student mark B, and else give student marks C, right? So if you consider the scenario of schools, it's not just pass or fail. You will have distinction. So you'll have A grade, B grade, then C grade, and finally you will have fail, right? So for such type of use cases, we cannot just have one if and else. We will need if, elif and else conditions. So we will check that now. So again, traditionally for now, we will consider that this now enter number will give us the marks. So enter marks, let's say. Okay. Now once the marks are entered, we want to grade that particular subject for the students. So if let's say input number is greater than 75, we want to print class A, right? Or maybe grade A, right? So far so good. So if I give him the number 87, okay, I think I have missed something. Let me check again. Okay, let's save this and do it one more time. If I give the number 87, it says that it is not supported between string and input. So let's see what is going on. We should actually consider this, right? Now let's run it again, 87. So you can see that we got the grade A. But if he is if he scores let's say 67, that doesn't mean that he's failed. If he goes below 35, then only he or she is failed, right? So now we will add one more condition known as elif, and this will act as the same way we write the if condition, that int num. So if the number is greater than 65, or let's say 60 for the sake of keeping things easy, we want to print grade B. Okay, let's try to run this one more time. Again, if I scored 87, I will get grade A. But now if I scored 71, you can see now I got the grade B. So we are still good. Now the usefulness of elif conditions, or the one of the properties of elif conditions, is that you can add n number of elif conditions. We can have hundreds of elif conditions in one if else statement. So I can add one more elif with int num. If it is greater than 40, then I will print grade C. Again, let's test this, run this. 87 grade A, 73 grade B, 55 grade C, correct. And finally, if the student is scoring the number which is below 40, then of course we want to print fail. So I will write else print fail. Okay, let's test this. If I scored only 12, then I will get the result as fail. So I hope this is clear, guys. Let's run through this if, elif and else statement one more time. So we are checking whether the first condition is true or not, whether the numbers are greater than 75 or not, and we got the result grade A if the condition is true. But if this is not true, then we will go to the next condition. So we'll check if the number is greater than 60. If it is true, we will then execute this. If this is also not true, again one more time we will go to the next elif condition and check whether that works or not. And finally, when no else elif conditions or if conditions are meeting as true, then we will finally execute the else code, which is print fail. So this is how if, elif and else works together. Now there is one trick that you have to remember whenever you will work with elif and else. Now let's see what it is. For the same example, now I will try to switch the elif conditions from here to there. So what do I mean by that? I will execute one more code, but now I will first of all take this and I will write that if int num is greater than 40, then I want to print grade C. Elif int num is greater than 60, I want to print grade B. Elif int num is greater than 75, I want to print grade A. And of course, if he scores less than 40, then we want to write else print fail. Now think about it. Do you see any potential difference between the first coding block and the second one? From a logical angle, there is no difference, right? In both of these conditions, in both of these scenarios, the conditions are same. If student scores 40, more than 40, then grade C, more than 60, grade B, more than 75, grade A, and less than 40, he fails. So ideally, both of these conditional blocks should work in the same direction, right? Let's see if that is true. If I scored 87 in the first if block, I got the grade A. If I scored 87 again, you can see that the result is grade C. Now why is that? If I scored 69, I got grade B. If I scored 69, I got again the grade C. So what is going on exactly? If you see that if, elif and else forms a conditional block, and conditional block will go through all the conditions in order to find that one condition which is true, and as soon as that condition is true, that the code inside that condition will be executed and the remaining conditions will be neglected. So what happens over here is that every time we give any integer, so if you consider 87, that is greater than 40 anyways, and that is why the first condition itself becomes true and gets executed. So Python never gets to the second or third condition, because any number which is greater than 75 will be obviously greater than 40, and that is why all the time the first condition will be met true. Only if you score less than 40, let's say you scored 30, then you will fail, which is also the case over here. So if I scored 30, I will fail. This is because the first condition won't be true, and of course if the number is not greater than 40, it is not going to be greater than 60 or 75, and you will fail. But you have to keep in mind that whenever you are defining the conditions, you have to be always sure that you are writing conditions properly in a way where where then all the conditions can be executed if needed. Now we will see one of the examples of how to actually use the if and else if conditions. We will actually develop one game known as stone paper scissor. So stone paper scissor game. So the rules of the game is are very simple. I am pretty sure you guys have heard about stone paper scissor. So in this there are two participants. Let's say in this condition you are the one participant and computer is the another participant. And now if you say that you are stone, if the computer is paper, then computer wins, because paper can wrap stones. And if the computer is scissor and you are stone, then the stone can actually break the scissors. So that is how you win. You can actually get more information about this game on the internet. So scissor game rules. It's a very simple game. So you can see that you can either be rock or paper or scissor, and the rules is that rock wins against scissor, scissor wins against paper, and paper wins against rock, right? So these are the rules. But of course if you and computer both shows rock, that means the game is tie and nobody wins. So let's try to create this game using Python. So of course there are three possibilities that can come out, right? Either you can win, or computer can win, or simply match draws. So let's try to do this. So there are three outcomes. Now let's try to code it actually. Outcomes we have three. So it is either stone or paper or scissor. Okay, so maybe for stone I will write rock, paper and scissor. Okay, now to get computers input, we will use a Python library known as random. Don't worry about the import and all these things as of now. In the next lecture when we actually start with Python libraries, I will explain it to you everything. So I will just import this random library. For now just remember that using this library we can programmatically choose any random value between these three. So computer output is what we want to get, right? So random number is equal to random dot random integer between 0 to 2, right? Because we should get either 0 or 1 or 2. So I will do something like outcomes and then this random number. Let's see if this works so far. If I execute this and of course I will also try to print this. So if I execute this, I get scissor, I get paper, I get scissor again, I get rock, rock, scissor, rock, paper. So you can see that this is totally randomized. And this second input we will take from the user. So input from user. So this will be input, and we will ask please share your guess. Okay, so a user will either write R, P or S. As of now let's just consider this scenario. Now we have to actually compare the value entered by the user and compare the value created by the computer or guessed by the this random library, and we have to do the testing. So if now here the condition starts, if the computer shows the output as rock, then what should happen? Now consider a fact that there are actually three possibilities. Even when computer selects rock, either computer can win, or you can win, or the match can be drawn. So by just using one if condition, it will not work. We will have to actually nest couple of ifs inside each other. So if computer output is rock and if user output, now here you can see that we have if inside if. So if user output is paper, then that means rock will paper will win against rock. So that means print you win, right? Now here we will add one more condition, that elif input by user is so rock, paper and scissor. So if the input by user is scissor, then computer will win, comp win. And of course when both of the people have presented rock, then else will become draw, match draw, right? So I hope this condition is clear to you. If the computer is showing rock, then we want to execute this code block, where then we check what is the input of user. So if it is paper, then paper will win. If it is scissor, then the rock will win. And if both computer and user has entered rock, then the match is drawn. Similar to this, now I will add one more condition where computer is showing scissor. So elif computer output is scissor, then what will happen? Then again, when computer output is there, then we will add one more if condition. So if input from user is paper, then of course scissor will win. So print comp win. But if now here elif input from user is rock, then rock will win. That means user will win. User win or you win. And finally, if both of the contestants are showing scissors, then it will be draw, right? And finally we will have an else block, because there is no need of one more elif, because of course either it is going to be rock or scissor or paper. There is no fourth option. Then here, so when we say else, that means computer has presented or chosen the paper as their output. Then if the computer is paper and user is rock, then computer will win, comp win. If computer is paper and user is scissor, then you will win. Otherwise, if both of the contestants are showing paper, then the match is drawn. So match draw. So I hope this if, else if, elif, else and nested if is clear to you guys. So let's try it one more time, right? So let's give our guess as rock, and the result is match drawn, because you can see we are also printing computer and computer has also selected rock. Let's do scissor, and you can see that computer had paper, and that's why we won. So this is how the if and elif and else and the nesting of multiple conditions together will work. So I hope the conditions are clear to you guys. This is I have actually tried to present to you in a very simple manner where you will get an idea. And to end this topic about condition, we will just add one more thing which is known as pass keyword. So what do we mean by that? So far we have written all these statements like number is 10, and then we have written that if number is greater than 10, then we want to print greater than 10, else print, or maybe we can add one more condition with very small, and we can add one more condition about 5. Let's say that elif number is greater than 5, then we want to right now print greater than 5 less than 10. Okay, so far so good. So if I write 11, then I got greater than 10. But what if we want to write one condition where then we don't want to execute anything? It's just that if that condition is true, then don't do anything. So for example, either I want to print number is greater than 10, or I want to print very small. Even though the number is, let's say, 7, I don't want to print anything, but I just want that command to be true. I mean, that command should be there in my code, but nothing should happen. So in that case, what I will do is I will simply write pass over here, because if I keep it empty, you will see that we will get an error. Whenever you will write a condition, you have to pass some sort of at least one sort of like code in it which will execute when this condition is met true. If you keep it empty, this will not work. So if you want to keep that as empty, then we can add pass. So by just adding pass, this means that nothing should be executed over here. It is just one condition that we want to add. And then when we run this, so even if I give 7, there won't be any output, but again the code is running, there is no error in it. So there is one question that what will we do if we want to give option to a user whether to continue the game or gamer to terminate, or simply ask them to play again. So in this condition, then we will have to write it as a function. So we will see that in today's lecture only. Don't worry, we will answer this question. We will take the same example, we will take the same game, and we will execute that game one more time. Okay, so I hope this is clear now. Okay, then let's move forward and learn about another important concept known as loops. So what are loops? Loops are the way, using loops we can execute certain functions on data in series. So it can be tuple, list, dictionary, one by one. Okay, now this is where the power of Python starts coming in. So far we have seen that okay, we can using conditions, we can check whether the number is even or the number is odd or the number is less than 10, greater than 10, so on and so forth. But we were only dealing with one number or one input at a time, and that is not the case. We have always heard that if you have millions of points or an Excel sheet with millions of rows, then using Python you can execute similar command on each row and get the result. So for example, if you have a data set of, let's say, all your marks for one semester, so you have 12 marks one for each subject, and you want to check whether you have passed the semester or you have failed the semester. So if you have failed more than 3 subjects, that means you have failed the semester, right? So you have to write a loop where then you will check for each number whether that number is greater than 40 or not, and if it is, that means you have passed the subject. And if your total number of failed subject exceeds than 3, that means you have failed the semester, right? So you can see that this means that we want to execute some sort of function on each one of the element in the list or in the tuple or in the dictionary. So to do that, we actually use loops. Using loops, we can execute the function again and again. So for the sake of example, let's just take a example of a list. So as we said, let's take a example of lists of my marks. So I scored 15, then let's say 12, then 11. Now this is out of 20. So I scored 4, then 3, then 8. So 6 subjects are done, then 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th. Okay, so these are the marks that I have scored for 10 subjects out of 20. Okay, so each result is out of 20. So I got 15 out of 20, 12 out of 20, 20 out of 20, and also 2 out of 20. Now the first thing we will do is we will create a very simple loop where we print each number individually. Okay, so print each number. So there are 2 ways to do this job. First is using a while loop. So while loop. So in a while loop, we write a command that, again, consider English language. So how will we say while in a sentence? We'll say that while this thing is going on, execute this. So while it is still daytime, make sure that you are working, right? So that means while, and then whatever we will say after that, where while that statement is true, then do something. So same way will happen over here. So while, and then we will write something. So here actually for the marks we will use a for loop, but let's just try to understand the while loop first of all. So let's say that we have a very simple variable to begin with. So I is equal to 0, and then we will say that while I is less than 10, we want to keep on printing I. Okay, so what is happening over here is that while I is less than 10, so while 0 is less than 10, print I. And you can consider that if I execute this right now, I will get into an infinite loop. So let's see how. So you can see that we are getting infinite number of zeros, because 0 is always going to be less than 10, right? It is always going to be the case that 0 is less than 10. So that is why whenever we create a while loop, we make sure that after our business logic or after our code, we make sure that we are either increasing this value or decreasing this value depending upon what we are doing. But we have to be sure that this value either is increased or decreased. If I execute this now, you can see that I got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 up to 9. So this is how while loop is written. While, and then we will give a condition. It is very similar to if, right? In the if statement as well, we did the similar sort of thing. We wrote if, and then we wrote that, yeah, this is the condition, and if it is true, then we want to do something. So this is exactly what we are doing over here. While this condition is true, we are printing I, and then we are increasing the value of I. So I becomes 1. Again, 1 is still greater than 10, less than 10, and we executed this. We do it till the point where then I becomes 10, and then since 10 is not less than 10, the while loop ends. So this is how while loop is created, guys. Here again, a very important thing we have to consider, that we always have to make sure that there is some sort of change in the value of I that has to be done, otherwise we'll get stuck in an infinite loop. Okay, same thing we can do with something like I is equal to 20, and then I can write while I is while I is less than, or let's say is greater than 20. Let's see, we will try to do something different. So while I is greater than 20, so in this case we will start with, let's say, 40. So while I is greater than 20, we want to print I, and then we want to decrease the value of I by 2. So what will happen now is we'll get everything from 40 all the way up to 20, but with the increment with the decrement of 2, obviously. So we'll get 40, 38, 36, 34, like this. So I hope this while is clear to you guys. Please, again, if you have any questions, feel free to add the questions in the chat box so I can answer to you guys. Okay, so I hope that while is clear to you guys. Now let's get back to our main problem of the marks. We want to print the marks. So again, I will also show you how to do it using while, but that is after some time. First of all, I will present to you the very simple way to do this. So again, now I will write, second is the for loop. For loop. So in for loop, we actually write it like this. So for, and then there is some sort of variable that we have to give. So for example, I, and then we'll write in marks, and then we will execute the code that we want to execute. So what is happening over here? Now we are saying that for I in marks, that means for each value in the marks, we want to, what do we want to do with each value? We simply want to print that value as of now, right? So we'll write print, and if I execute this, you can see that we get 15, 12, 11, 4, so on and so forth. So this is how for loop works. In for loop, we expect that the value that we are going to loop over is some sort of is a list or a tuple, some sort of thing that we can loop through. So if I actually change it with a string marks, then you will see that we will actually get each individual character as this I. This is because we can loop through this. So always make sure that whenever you want to use a for loop, your data is actually loopable, or the better word will be iterable. So if you remember our list or dictionaries lecture, we always used to write that whether this is iterable or whether this is not iterable and things like that. So if I go to the list, I think we will find it somewhere over here. Okay, okay, let's get back to the loops. Okay, so this is how we can do the iteration. Now what is this I? This might become a little bit confusing to people. So I is any random variable that we assign to that particular one value. So I can also assign it as a mark. So if I go to my for loop one more time, I can write it as mark. So for mark in marks, print that particular mark, and I will get the same thing. So this mark is actually a variable that will get assigned to that particular one value that we are talking about whenever we are in a loop. So make sure that you understand it, understand this concept very clearly, guys. So this I or this mark can be anything. It doesn't matter, and it is not connected with the name of your variable. It can be anything. It can be apple as well. Not a problem. It will still work. So this is how the for loop is written, guys. Now there is one more type of loop that we can run, which is using a range. So the third is range. So in range, we define particular range that we want to run through. So I can write something like for I in range, and there are three different uh, uh, parameters that we can pass to it, and we will start with one by one. So the first is supply endpoint. So if I do something like 4 and if I print I, then you will see that I'll get 0, 1, 2, 3. So I'll get 4 values, and when only one parameter is passed, the first value will be considered as 0. So it will always begin with 0. So even if I do something like 41, then it will start with 0 and it will go all the way up to 40. So this is how the range is used with just one parameter by supplying the end input. If I copy this and if I paste it one more time by providing start and end point, so I can actually start with 25 and then go up to 41. If I now print it, I will start with 25 and then I will go all the way up to 41. So this is how the start and end parameter of range will work. Okay, I hope this is clear to you guys. And finally we have one more type of parameter, which is a step parameter. So you want to start with 5, you want to go all the way up to 50, but in the increment of 5. So how will this work is this will take 5 and then it will go 5 steps further, and then it will take the next value. So that means it will take 10. Then again it will go 5 steps further and it will take new value. If I print this, you will see that we get 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 like this. If I change it to 3, then I will get 5, 8, 11, 14, all the numbers in the steps of 3. So this is how we can use the range to actually define the start and end point. Now let's consider a scenario where we want to loop through the marks using a while loop. So you can see that while will actually require us to have a number, right? So how can we connect this marks with some sort of number? One thing we can do is we can actually take the length, so that we will know that okay, if the length is 10, that means I have to go from 0 to 10, right? And then for each index we can then actually fetch that index's number. So while loop will look something like this. For the sake of understanding, I will copy this marks one more time and I will then do something like this. I is equal to 0 and then the total is equal to length of this marks, and then what I will do is while I is less than range of total, so that means go from 0 to 10, then we want to print. Now here is the trick. If I print I, that will actually print that number 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 like this. Okay, wait. So actually range will not work with the while loop. I think I will convert it into the number, okay, because we will need a number, so we can actually just write the total, because of course total needs to be that number, right? So this will work. And you will see that again I forgot to add the increment, and that is why I am stuck in an infinite loop. So I will actually do I plus is equal to 1, and if I print it, I got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But this is not what I wanted, right? I wanted to print the actual number as it is. So can you guess how we can do this? We can actually refer to this as an index number, right? So if I do marks 0, that will actually fetch me this number, right? So what I can do is I can actually use marks, and then this I can use I as the index. If I execute this, then I will get the numbers 15, 12, 11, 4, 3 like this. So this is how we can use while loop to loop through a list. So I hope this is clear to you guys. Now we can combine lists, loops with conditions as well. So combining loops with conditions. because obviously when we are looping, that means we have to perform certain type of operation on each one of the individual element, right? Again, I will use the marks for the sake of example. And now what do I want to do is that for mark in marks, what do I want to do is I want to check print. I want to print that pass or fail. So I have to actually write two conditions where either my subject, I have scored enough to pass in that subject, or I have failed the subject. So what I can do is I can then write if mark is greater than 8, that means I have passed the subject. Now notice that the indentation will actually be one tab or four spaces from the location of if. So this will go one more. This will now become two tabs from the original for loop, or one tab from the if loop. So if mark is greater than 8, then I have passed, else I have failed. Now if I execute this, you'll see that I get pass, 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 fail, 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 pass, pass, and fail. So this is how we can actually use conditions inside loops. Okay, I hope this is clear to you guys. Now what we can do is we can actually now add one more thing which will tell us that we have either passed the semester or not. So if you remember, the condition is that if we have failed more than three or more than three subjects, then that means we have failed the semester. So what we will do is we will add one more variable known as failed subject count, and we will start it with 0 obviously. And for each failed subject we will actually do plus is equal to 1. And finally, when this if else block is done, then we will add one more if block, that if failed subject count is greater than or equal to 3, then we want to write print you have failed semester, else we want to write you have cleared semester. Okay, I hope this is clear to you guys. Okay, now let's run this. So we got pass, and then we again got you have cleared semester, pass, you have cleared semester, pass. And from this fail we got you have failed semester, you have failed semester. So something is not correct, right? Because we actually don't want to see whether we have passed or not until and unless all the if and else conditions are met, right? So that means after this loop is completed, then only this if should be checked, right? So we will actually move this. So I will use shift and tab to the left hand side. So we'll clear one indentation from all this. So what will happen is now the for and if are at the same indentation level. So what will happen is this, first of all, this for loop will get executed, and then we will come over here to check. Okay, now once we run this, we got pass, 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 fail, 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 pass, pass, fail, and finally we have failed the semester because we have 1, 2, 3, 4 subjects. If I increased my marks to, let's say, 13, 14, so that only in 2 subjects I am failing. If I save this and if I run this, I got pass, 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 fail, pass, 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 and fail, and finally we have cleared the semester. So you can see that this is how we can use the for loop and if and else conditions. Now can we do something like this? If we have if we have failed, let's say, 3 subjects, then there is no point on keeping the loop on, right? I mean, so what do I mean by that is, if you have, let's say, 20 subjects, if I just copy paste it one more time, if you have 20 subjects, okay, and you want to check whether you have failed 3 subjects, if you have failed 3 or more subjects, then that means you have failed the semester. So if you failed first 3 subjects only, then it doesn't matter what is the score of your remaining 17 subjects, right? You want to exit that loop because this is done, the deed is done. You have failed 3 subjects and your job is done over here. There's no point on keeping the loop working or checking all the remaining values. So what we will have to do in that case is we will have to actually write a break statement. So let's understand what is break statement. Break statement. So break statement allows us to break the for loop wherever we want. So again, let's consider a simple example of for I in range which is from 0 to 10. If we are printing I, you can see that we are printing all the numbers, but I want to actually stop this loop as soon as I get the number 4. So that means if I is equal to 4, then I want to break this. Okay, got my point? Now if I execute this, you can see that we get 0 1 2 3, and then we get break, and no more looping is done, no more printing is done. So this is how break statement can be used to actually stop the loop in between as soon as some condition is met true. So using this we can actually check, for every for loop we will check what is the final head count of failed sub count, right? Because if we get failed sub count is equal to true, or is equal to greater than or equal to 3, we can then simply break the statement, right? Because we don't need to actually show we don't actually need to go through the remaining marks as well, right? So this is how we can add the break statement. But what if we want to just skip this? So what do we mean by that? If we get I is equal to 4, then we want to skip the whatever code we have written after that, and we want to go to the next iteration. So I will simply replace this break by the skip. So I will add continue. Continue statement. So if I copy this one more time, and instead of break, if I write continue, then let's see what happens. So you can see that we got 0 1 2 3, and because in 4 we have written continue, that means don't execute anything but just go to the next iteration. We actually skipped 4 and then we went to 5 6 7 8 9 10. So this is how we can use break and continue to actually decide whether we want to execute some function or we don't want to execute some function. Okay, let's try to understand this in a better way. So we will do something like, if I is 4, then continue. If I is 6, then break. And we can also obviously have pass, if you remember from the last example. So what do we mean by pass is that don't do anything, just we don't want to do basically anything with the pass. It's just I want to have this condition, I don't want to execute something, but I just want this as a condition, so I will add a pass. Okay, let's see what happens. If I run this, you can see that we get 0 1 2 3, and for 4 we continued, so we were not printing this. We went to 5, we printed that, and when we went to 6, we hit this break statement, and then we just exit out of the for loop once and for all. So this is how break, continue and pass is used. Okay, and just like the conditions, we can also nest loops into one another. Okay, let's try to understand that with one example. Nested loops. So what we'll do is we will actually try to print the date and the month. So it will be a very simple example, but it will give you an idea. So date, let's say we want to go from 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, and then for the month We want Jan, Feb, March, April. Now the expected result is that we'll get 1st of Jan, 2nd of Jan, 3rd of Jan, 4th, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 Jan, 9 Jan, and then we'll get 1 Feb, 2 Feb, 3 Feb, 4 Feb, up to 9 Feb, then 1 March, 2 March, 3 March, like this. So if I do for one date in date, if I print that particular date, you can see that if I print that one particular date, I got 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. Now what I want to do is I want to add this month. So if I add, so that means how the looping will work is we will start with the loop of month. We will take Jan and then we will loop through all this. Then we will go to Feb. Then we'll loop through all this. So that means we are looping through this, and then for each value we are looping through this. So this is like a double loop is what we want to do. So what we'll do is, so what we will do for one month in month, and then for one date in date. Okay, so this is how it will work. So the bigger loop is month loop, the smaller loop is date loop. So that means for each one of the month, this entire for loop will work, and then the next value will be added to this 1 month, and then again this entire loop will work. So let's print it. Let's see how do we get. So f string that the date is one date and month is 1 month. Okay, so I hope this is clear. If I run this now, you will see that date 1 month Jan, date 2 month Jan, 3 Jan, 4 Jan, up to 9, and then we have 1 Feb, 2 Feb, 3 Feb, like this. So this is how the nested loops will work. Okay, whatever is the most child loop is, that will execute first, and then it will go all the way up to the parent loop. So here you can see that child loop executed first, then parent loop gets executed. So this is how the nested loop works. So I hope this is clear to you guys. Again, if you have any questions, please ask in the chat box, and we will take a short 2 minutes break, after which we will start working with functions. So this is the most important topic of Python. If you understood loops and conditions, then it will be very easy for you to understand functions, and if you understand functions, then at that point you can actually start coding in Python independently, guys. So I'll take a 2 minute breaks. I'll take a 2 minute break. Meanwhile, please feel free to flood the chat box with the questions that you have. Unfortunately, we will not be covering the concept of oops because we are actually trying to stick with a basic content which will at least get you started with the Python. But feel free to be in a Slack channel. I will put a lot of content related to some other videos. There are very awesome guys which are 100x 1000x better than me in this teaching and getting giving the knowledge of Python, and I will surely put the links in the Slack channel regarding oops. Thank you. Okay, let's move forward, guys. Now one of the most important concept, functions. So what are functions? So far, the reason why we were using notebooks is because then we can decide what functions, what code block we want to run at any point of time. We don't necessarily have to start from line 1 and then go all the way up to the last line in order to get the code executed. We used notebooks to actually write code blocks which we can execute whenever we want. But that is not going to happen in let's say when you develop a Django code or something like that. You will not have a notebook. In that case, you will have to write a function which will actually hold your code and will get executed whenever you will call that function. So for example, right now if I write print hi Krishna, then as soon as I hit this play button and as soon as I hit the play button, this print function will get executed. But what if I want to do this programmatically? I want to do this using Python, that I should be able to run this function using Python whenever I want. So what I will do is I will actually wrap this statement or this business logic, let's say, inside a function, and then I will execute that function or I will call that function whenever I want. So defining simple function. So function definition starts with the def because we are defining a function. Then you have to give the name of that function. So simple hello, and then open and close parenthesis, and then you will write colon, and again as soon as you hit enter you get inside the indentation of that function. If I write print hi Krishna over here, then it will give me an error because this is not correct from an indentation angle. Whatever logic that you want to write inside a function should be within one tab or four spaces to the right. Okay, so this is how we write the function. Now if I run this, you will see that the print of hi Krishna was not executed, but actually a function is created which then I can calling a function. So I can simply call this, and if I run this, then you can see that I got hi Krishna. So this means now I have a power of running a particular piece of code whenever I want by simply calling this function. So you can see that this is how we can actually write functions and we can call the functions whenever we want. But again, now we are at a point where we no longer write hi Krishna, right? We always write the names in a variable and then we pass the variables to the print functions and then they work. So that means, for example, if I have a name of let's say Manish written over here, and if I pass that name to this print function, then if I run this again and if I run this, I got hi Manish. But then if you think about it, every time I have to update or I have to write a new name, I have to go over here and then update that name. So let's say Maya. Save this, run this, and then again run this. This is not what we want, right? Maybe if there's some way that whenever we are calling a function, we should be also able to pass the variable value that we want to use inside this. So how will we do that? That means creating function with arguments. So what do we mean by arguments is that whenever we will define a function call name, then we will define that what all variables can we use inside this function. So for example, we will use name, right? And then we will use print f hi, and then we will pass this name. Now if it is getting confusing that if this name and this name is same, then I will actually change this to name arg, so short for argument, and then this name argument will be actually used inside this function. So you can see that now, and of course if you remember from the day one, that variables have some local scope when the variables are defined for that particular function. So this name arg can only be used inside this function, not outside the function, right? So this is how we will define our function, and then to call this function, then we will pass call name, and now we will pass any information, so Sahil, and if I execute this I get hi Sahil. If I do call name and then if I do Indu, then I will get hi Indu. So this is how we can pass the argument to a function, and there is no limit to how many arguments you can pass. You can also have something like def sum of numbers, and then let's say you have a b c as 3 numbers. Then you can also do something like print a plus b plus c. Okay, this is also a valid function. I can then call this function and I can pass 1 comma 4 comma 7, and this will give me 12. So there are no limitation to the number of arguments that you can pass. But what if, so now this is one scenario, but consider this thing. Sometimes whenever you create account on any social media platform, let's say a Gmail, not necessarily you will have a profile picture uploaded, right? There will be some sort of default profile picture available to you, which will be used even if you don't have a profile picture uploaded. That means if I use this call name function now without any name, then it will give me an error that a call name is missing one positional argument of name arg. So I want some sort of default value available to my function all the time, so that if I miss any argument, that particular default value will be used. So function with default value for argument. So what we will do is, now we will define one more function call with def name, and don't worry about this name, this you can give anything you want. And now here, instead of just keeping this variable name as it is, I will write is equal to stranger. Okay, so I'm defining a default value that if there is no value presented by the user from the front end, then use this stranger as the default value for the name, and then I can print hi and then name. Okay, now if I run this function and if I pass Monisha, then I got hi Monisha. But if I just pass this function as, if I just call this function as it is, no variables, no arguments at all, then I will get hi stranger. So this is how we define the default argument to any function. So I hope this is clear to you guys, and please notice that we are just using simple print functions inside these functions, but that is not the case. You can write your entire business logic inside this. So if you remember, in the if conditions, we created so many conditions that take the number and then give the result. For example, to test whether the person has scored grade A, grade B, grade C, or he or she has failed, we were using input. But now we don't need to actually use input. We will simply copy this and we will create our function def give grade, and then we will add mark, So we will add marks basically, and then we will simply execute this function. I have to be sure that the indentation is correct. Here you can see that elif and else are at the same indentation level as the def, and which is obviously not correct. So I will make everything inside. Print functions should also be aligned properly, and I will use this same int num as my argument name. So actually argument name doesn't matter, because nobody who is actually using this function or executing this function will have to deal with it if there are only few parameters. I will get to it very soon. Okay, so I have created this give grade, and now I can keep on passing the grades. So keep on passing the numbers, and then it will spit out the grade for me. So give grade 98, grade A, give grade 31, fail, like this. Now what if the rules are different for different types of rules are different for different types of uh, arguments? So that means I want to use multiple arguments together, and what if I don't recall the exact position of arguments? So what do I mean by that? So if I create one function known as is bigger, where I have a and b, and I'm printing, so if a is greater than b, then I'm printing a is bigger, else I'm printing b is bigger. Okay, simple as that. Now if I pass 5,8, obviously we will get b is bigger. Okay, if I do is bigger 9,2, I will get a is bigger. But consider this, if you just look at this, you have no idea what is a and what is b. Just because the output is telling us that a is bigger, we are assuming that this is a. But what if we don't remember the position of a and b in the function? So in that case, we can actually assign the value by also calling the name of those variables. So I can do something like b is equal to 9 and a is equal to 2. So here, even I have written 9 first and 2 afterwards, I am explicitly telling the Python that use this value 9 with the argument of b, and if I execute this, then I will get b is bigger. So this is how we can actually write a function with mentioning that what value should go for which particular variable. So I hope this is clear to you guys now. Okay, finally we will also see what are lambda functions. So far what we were doing is we were actually defining a function, we were giving it some name and using the variable. But there are a lot of times we want to write a function which will execute a very simple thing. So for example, if let's say if I have a function known as GST calculator, where then I will take the rate of GST and the value, and then what I will do is I will print the rate into 1.18. so actually rate is the value, so we'll consider that you will adding it as an 18%, for example. So what we'll do is we'll actually divide it by 100, and then we will add 1 to it. Okay, so this will give me the rate, and then if I multiply it by the value, then this will actually give me the entire value. Okay, so now if I do GST calculation for the 18% GST of a price 1000, then it will give me 118 point 118 180.0. So far so good, right? Now what is happening is that we are actually printing it, but we don't want to print it. We actually have, let's say, a mobile phone which is of the cost 1000, and we want to replace that value with 18, so that we actually want to store whatever value that we get into a variable. So in that case print will not work, because print will actually print the result. So what we do is, instead of print we use the keyword return. Okay, return keyword. Using it we can store the final output of function in variable. So what we'll do is, we'll copy this function and instead of print we will do return. By doing this, now we can actually assign this function to any variable. So I can have something like computer is equal to GST calc, and with the rate of 18% and the value of, let's say, 100,000. Now if I print computer, I will get the value as 118,000. So this is how, using a return function or return keyword, we can actually return whatever is the value to a particular variable. So I hope this return keyword is clear to you guys. Now again, back to the main problem. What we were discussing is that most of the time we will write a functions where we will only need that function to do one job. For example, here we are taking the rate, we are taking the value, and then we are just returning the rate with the GST, right? It is a simple one-liner command that we want to execute. Generally, when we will write functions, we will have something like this. We will have if, else conditions, for loops, and so on and so forth. But if you know that your function is going to have just one particular piece of computation that needs to be done, then you can write lambda functions. So lambda functions are unknown are the functions where you don't need any name for such functions. So let's consider the same example of GST. So what I will do is, I will actually write a function like this: GST val is equal to lambda function where I have arguments as rate and value, and what do I want to do is, I want to execute this logic. Simple as that. So this is how I can write the same function in just one line. And now I can do the same thing. If I have car is equal to GST val, and then rate is 18 and the cost is, let's say, 500,000, then my car will have the value 5,90,000. So 590 and 000. So this is how you can use the lambda function. Again, lambda functions can have n number of arguments, but they will only and only execute one particular command. So you cannot, here what you can do is, you can have multiple things, that if rate is greater than 12, then you can have something like this. So you can do this, and else if rates are greater than 12, then you can print that too much GST, something like this. If I execute this now, you will see that computer actually make it less than, maybe that will be make sense. So you can see that computer is actually presenting too much GST. But then this cannot be done using lambda function, because lambda function will only execute one command, or it will only execute one particular computation. You cannot have if else conditions in lambda. So I hope this is clear to you guys. So these are some of the types of functions that we can execute. Again, in functions we can also use the keywords such as pass. Okay, now let's try to do some practice questions with the function. Is that first thing we will do is, let's say, convert meter to foot. Let's try to do this. So define function m to ft, and we'll take meter, and we all know that 1 meter is approximately 3.28 feet. Let's confirm it one more time. So meter to feet, meter to feet 3.28. Okay, so return m into 3.28. Correct? Now I can do something like 10 meter is equal to meter to feet, and then I can pass 10, and this will give me the value 32.8. So this is how you can actually write different functions to execute different types of commands. So I hope this functions is clear to you guys. Okay, you can try to actually make your own functions where then you can have different types of taxes and things coming into the picture. So let's try to create one more example where then we will have a GST rate. Function will take following arguments. First is GST rate, which is applicable on base value. Then you have discount, applicable on base value. Then you have profit, let's say applicable on final value. Okay, and then you have coupon, which is also applicable on final value. Okay, so now of course GST must be added, discount must be added, profit must be added, and then the coupon, actually discount and coupon will be reduced, and then GST and profit will be added. So try to do this question on your own. So if you have a product with the base value, so you have a base value as 1000, you have GST rate as 18%, discount as 5%, and coupon code as the value, let's say 80. So it's not 80, but actually the whatever is the unit over here, so let's say dollar and $80. So can you create a function which can actually convert all these percentage into numbers and then calculate the final value of the product? So the first thing we'll do is we'll obviously create a function final value, and then we'll have 4 parameters, right? We'll have GST, base value, then discount, and then the coupon. And then we will start our calculation. So GST value will actually become the GST divided by 100 plus 1 into base value. Okay, then there is a discount which is applicable on the base value. So again, disc value will become something similar to this. So you can also outsource this to one more function, if you want, and then you can use that function inside this. So how will I do that is I will take def and then disk price. Let's say we'll have a disk price, we'll take a disk rate value, and then we will simply return. So this can be a lambda function as well. So what we have to do is we have to return. So we'll take disk value by 100 plus 1 into value. This will actually give us the discounted the actual discount value, and since this is a discount, that means we have to remove it. So value minus this entire thing, right? So I can actually write it as a function or even as a lambda function. So let's try to do that for the add value. So add value. So for example, disk value is the discount value, so coupon or let's say a discount percent will be removed, and then add value like GST will be added. So add value will actually become your lambda function, where then you'll again take add percent and value, and then you will return something like value plus add percent by 100 plus 1 into value, right? So I hope this is clear, guys. So there is a question, what will we do if we don't know how many arguments we have to pass, or the user can pass n number of arguments? Sure, so let's have a look at that as well. So again, now I have outsourced this entire particular thing to the function, so I can actually use add value. So add value will give me the value, so I will add GST and then the base value. So this will actually give me the final value, not just the GST value, because we are also doing value plus this GST value. So this will give me a GST value. Then for the discount value, then we can have discount value. So for the sake of simplicity, we'll just keep these values actually. Yes. Okay, so the discounted price and then disc and then the base. Okay, so far so good. And finally, coupon is the value that we want to remove as it is. So the base, so what we have to do is return base plus GST underscore value minus disc value and minus of course the coupon as it is, which is your $80. Okay, so I hope this is clear, guys. So this is how we can actually write functions, other functions, lambda functions, and then use functions inside functions. Okay, so the final value GST is 18, base price is 1000, discount is 5%, and coupon is 80. So this will give me 1050. Okay, so I hope this is clear to you guys. Now the question is that what if we don't know how many arguments are going to be there? In that case, the function needs to be written using an arbitrary arguments. So that is a next type, which is at the number 4, arbitrary arguments. So this is created using sign like this. Okay, so let's say we have to define all kids, and then the here now what will happen is that we will write something like this, kids. Because we don't know how many kids are going to be, we will write it as an arbitrary argument, and then for kid in kids we'll print each kid. Okay, so I hope this works. Let's see. Now I can pass all kinds, and then Tom and let's say Jerry, and then this will print me Tom and Jerry. If I do Tom, Dora, Jerry, it will still print me Tom, Dora and Jerry. So this is how we can use arbitrary arguments to pass particular information. Okay, I hope this is clear, guys. So just like this, we also have a keyword arguments. So what do we mean by that? In keyword arguments, so let me add one more markdown, keyword arguments. So these are actually double asterisk arguments. So these are also known as quargs. Okay, in this we will write something like def properties of pet. Okay, and then we will write pet. Now here we can print pet and then the property, let's say color. Then we can do print pet and then height. Okay, something like this. So this is how we will define a function where we know what is exactly the argument that we are going to expect. Then I can write something like property of pet, and then color is equal to red, and then height is equal to 3. So now you can see that we got red and 3. So in the quarks we use keywords. So pet is always going to be there, and then we use the keyword. So when we write color, then we will try to find color in the arguments. So here we will define the arguments with the actual name, the as a variables, and in the arbitrary arguments we will pass the data as a tuple. If I try to print this kids, you will see that I'll get it as a tuple. So print type kids. So you can see that we get the data as a tuple. So it's not easy that we can actually add information from it to this kids. We will have to convert it into the list and then do it backwards. So I hope this is clear to you guys. I hope this functions, the loops and the conditions is clear to you guys. And by this I end the first first chapter of our journey to the geospatial Python, which is of understanding Python. So I would highly recommend you guys to practice Python over the week, so that next time when we meet we can actually start understanding the Python libraries. Now this Python libraries will give you an idea that why Python is famous and used across all the industries. So stay tuned, and I'm pretty sure you guys have subscribed to the channel. If not, please do it, and make sure that you are part of the Slack group, because that is where I will keep on adding these notebooks, and I will keep on adding more videos and information about it. Thank you everyone. Have a good day, good night, wherever you are. Thank you.